Chapter 1, Introduction to LDAP. Directories, directory versus database. LDAP, protocol or directory. Directory clients and servers. Distributed directories. Advantages of using a directory. LDAP history and standards. OSD and the Internet. X.500, the directory server standard. Lightweight access to X.500. Beyond LDAP version 3. Directory components. LDAP standards. IBM's directory enabled offerings. Directories to resources on the web. Chapter 2, LDAP concept and architecture. Overview of LDAP architecture, the informational model. LDIF, LDAP schema. The naming model. LDAP distinguished name syntax. DNs. String form, URL form. Functional model. Query. Referrals and continuation references. Search, filter syntax. Compare, update operations. Authentication operations. Controls and extended operations. Security model. Directory security. No authentication, basic authentication. SASL, SSL and TLS. Chapter 3, Planning your directory, defining the directory content, defining directory requirements, data design, sources for data, characteristics of data elements, related data, organizing your directory, schema design, namespace design, naming style, securing directory entries, purpose, analysis of security requirements, design overview, authentication design, authorization design, non-directory security considerations, designing your server and network infrastructure, availability, scalability, and manageability requirements, topology design, replication design, administration, IBM Tivoli Directory Server Overview and Installation. Chapter 4, IBM Tivoli Directory Server Overview, definition of ITDS, ITDS 5.2, resources on ITDS, summary of ITDS related chapters. Chapter 5, ITDS installation and basic configuration, Windows, installable components, installation and configuration checklist, system and software requirements, ITDS client, ITDS server, including client, web administration tool, installing the server, create a user ID for ITDS, installing ITDS with install shield, graphical user interface, configuring the administrator DL and password, configuring the database, adding a suffix, removing or reconfiguring a database, enabling and disabling the changelog, starting ITDS, Chapter 6, ITDS installation and basic configuration AIX, installable components, installation and configuration checklist, system and software requirements, ITDS client, ITDS server, including client, web administration tool, installing the server, create the user ID for ITDS, installing ITDS with install shield, graphical user interface, configuring the administrator DN and password, configuring the database, adding a suffix, removing or reconfiguring a database, enabling and disabling the changelog, starting ITDS, uninstalling ITDS. Chapter 7, ITDS installation and basic configuration on Intel Linux, installable components, installation and configuration checklist, system and software requirements, ITDS client, ITDS server, including client, web administration tool, installing the server, create a user ID for ITDS, installing ITDS with the install shield, graphical user interface, configuring the administrator DL and password, configuring the database, adding a suffix, removing or reconfiguring a database, enabling and disabling the changelog, starting ITDS, quick installation for ITDS 5.2 on Intel, minimal graphical user interface, installing ITDS, removing all vestiges of ITDS 5.2 install on Intel Linux. Chapter 8, IBM Tivoli Directory Server Installation, IBM Z Series. Installing LDAP on ZOS using the LDAP CNF utility, running the MVS jobs, loading the schema, enabling native authentication, migrating data to LDAP on ZOS, migrating LDAP server contents to ZOS, moving RFCF users to TDPM space. In Part 3, in-depth configuration and tuning. Chapter 9, IBM Tivoli Directory Server Distributed Administration. Web Administration Tool Graphical User Interface. Starting the Web Administration Tool. Logging on to the console as a console administrator. Logging on to the console as the server administrator. And as the console administrator. Logging on as member of administrative group or LDAP user. Logging off the console. Starting and stopping the server using web administration, using the command line or Windows services icon. Console layout, configuration only mode, minimum requirements for configuration only mode, starting LDAP in configuration only mode, verifying the server is in configuration only mode, setting up the console, managing the console, creating an administrative group, enabling and disabling the administrative group, adding members to the administrative group, modifying an administrative group member, removing a member from the administrative group. IBM SLAPD command parameters, directory administration daemon. The IBM DM command, starting the directory administration daemon, stopping the directory administration daemon error log. The IBM dirctl command, manual installation of IBM OS Express, manual installation of the web administration tool, manually installing the web administration tool, default ports used by IBM OS Express, installing in WebSphere version 5.0 or later. Chapter 10 Client Tools, the LDAP change pwd command, synopsis, options, examples, SSL TLS note, diagnostics, the LDAP delete command, synopsis, description, options, examples, SSL TLS notes, diagnostics, the LDAP exop command, synopsis, description, options, the LDAP modify LDAP add commands, synopsis, description, options, examples, SSL TLS notes, diagnostics, the LDAP mod RDN command, synopsis, description, options, examples, SSL TLS notes, diagnostics, the LDAP search command, synopsis, description, options, examples, SSL TLS notes, diagnostics, summary. Chapter 11 Schema Management. What is the schema? Available schema files, schema support, OID, inheritance, modifying the schema, IBM attribute types, working with object classes, working with attributes, disallowed, schema changes, indexing, migrating the schema, exporting the schema, importing the schema, dynamic schema, Chapter 12 Group and Role Management, groups, static groups, dynamic groups, nested groups, hybrid groups, determining group membership, group object classes, group attribute types, roles, summary. Chapter 13 Replication, general replication concepts, terminology, hard replication functions, major replication topologies, simple master replica topology, master forwarder replica topology, ITDS 5.2 and later, gateway replication topology, ITDS 5.2 and later, peer replication, replication agreements, configuring replication topologies, simple master replica topology, using the command line, promoting a replica to peer master, command line for complex replication, web administration tasks for managing replication, managing topology, modifying the replication properties, creating replication schedules, managing queues, preparing replication differences between replicas, the LDAP diff command tool, access control, Chapter 14 access control, overview, ACL model, entry owner information, access control information, access control attribute syntax, subject, pseudo DLS, object filter, rights, propagation, access evaluation, working with ACLs, summary, Chapter 15 securing the directory, directory security, authentication, anonymous authentication, basic authentication, authentication using SASL, Kerberos, password policy enforcement, overview, password encryption, SSL TLS support, overview of TLS, overview of SSL, SSL utilities configuring SSL security, protection against dust attacks, non-blocking sockets, extending operation for killing connections, emergency threat, connection reaping, allow anonymous bind, access control, summary, Chapter 16 performing tuning, ITDS application components, ITDS LDAP caches, LDAP filter cache bypass limits, LDAP entry cache, measuring filter and entry cache sizes, LDAP ACL cache, setting other LDAP cache configuration variables, LDAP attribute cache only 5.2 and later, configuring attribute caching, transaction and event notification, additional slapped and IBM slapped settings, tune the IBM directory server configuration file, suffixes, recycle the IBM directory server, verify suffix order, DB2 tuning, warning, when IBM directory server is running, DB2 buffer pool tuning, LDAP BP buffer pool size, IBM default BP buffer pool size, setting buffer pool sizes, warnings about buffer pool memory usage, other DB2 configuration parameters, warning about min commit, more DB2 configuration settings, configuration script, directory size, optimization and organization, optimization, reorg, CHK and reorg, indexes, distributing the database across multiple physical disks, create file systems and directories on the target disks, backing up the existing database, performing a redirect to restore of the database, DB2 backup and restore, concurrent updates on symmetric multiprocessor systems, AIX operating system tuning, enabling large files, tuning process memory size limits, AIX specific process size limits, AIX data segments and LDAP process DB2 collections, verifying process data segment usage, adding memory after installation on Solaris systems, SLAPD, OCHAN, DLERS, variable on Windows, IBM directory change and audit log, when to configure the LDAP change log, when to configure the LDAP audit log, hardware tuning, disk speed improvements, monitoring performance, LDAP search with CN monitor, monitor examples, troubleshooting error files, Chapter 17, monitoring IBM Tivoli directory server, overview, monitoring tools, viewing server state, viewing status of worker threads, viewing connections information, viewing other general information about the directory server, analyzing changelog, analyzing log files, operating system commands for monitoring ITDS summary. Part 4, developing directory-enabled applications, Chapter 18, debugging IBM Tivoli directory server related issues. Overview, debugging problems, debugging configuration problems, debugging directory server related errors using log files, using server debug modes, DB2 error log file. Summary, Chapter 19, developing C-based applications. Overview, typical API usage, API flow when searching a directory, LDAP init function, LDAP simple bind function, LDAP search as function, LDAP first entry function, LDAP first attribute function, LDAP get values function, LDAP next attribute function, LDAP get values function, LDAP next entry function, LDAP unbind as function. Sample code to search the directory, API flow when updating a directory entry, LDAP init, LDAP simple bind as function, LDAP modify as function, LDAP unbind function. Sample code to update the directory entry. Chapter 20, developing GNDI based applications. The GNDI, searching for the directory, creating the directory context, performing the search, processing the search results, changing a directory entry, creating the directory context, performing the modification. Part 5, appendixes, Appendix A, DSML version 2, DSML version 2 introduction, DSML version 1.0, DSML version 2.0, difference between DSML version 1 and DSML version 2, difference between DSML version 2 and LDAP, typical DSML transaction, DSML version 2 IBM implementation, ITDS DSML version 2 support, IBM DSML version 2 top level structure, IBM DSML LDAP operations and bindings.